I didn't watch any of the live NFL games this week, so unfortunately, I had to check out all the games through the still poorly edited NFL highlight videos. I feel like my editing is better than the NFL's editing this year. Last week started and ended with games that resulted in a 10-7 fucking snooze fest. If week 10 was a sandwich, this bread would be soggy, both top and bottom. 8-6 was the record for me last week. Not horrible, but could have been much better, obviously. Let's dive right in. Once again, we have another garbage matchup for Thursday Night Football, Jets vs. Patriots. And that's not me saying that the Patriots are bad because they're actually the hottest team in the NFL right now, continuing their win streak to 7 in a row, taking down the Buccaneers, and they're looking great on both sides of the ball. I hate that the Jets are in this matchup. They had one of the ugliest wins of the season so far over the Browns. Despite the win, the Jets played like shit, and I don't see them stopping the Patriots win streak. Patriots win. Next, you got the washed Redskins versus the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins pulled off an upset against the Buffalo Bills, but not just an upset. It was an ass-whooping upset, defeating them by 3 possessions in Miami, though that was definitely a game I would say that the Bills lost as opposed to the Dolphins winning. Devon A-Chain carried the fuck out of Miami that game, slicing for nearly 175 rushing yards while also being their second leading receiver. They'll be taking on the Redskins, who are still beat to shit on injuries, and they got their ass whipped by the Lions. This game could go either way. It's a very inconsistent Dolphins team taking on a very vulnerable Washington team. So I'm going to pick Miami to win because it's being played in Miami, so maybe the weather will be warm. I don't know. I just feel like the Dolphins will come away with the win. Next, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. The Buccaneers, as I said, lost to the Patriots, and the Bills, as I said, got beat by the Dolphins pretty badly. But the thing with the Bills is, despite the lopsided score, looking at them on paper and actually watching the highlights, they didn't even do super bad overall. It was when they got into the red zone and started turning the ball over left and right. I think they had 3 or 4 turnovers. They were moving efficiently just to keep fucking up at the end. They were edging themselves. They'll be taking on the Bucks, who, not really an embarrassing loss. They just got outplayed by the Patriots. It was a good game. This is a tough one because the Buffalo Bills are so frustratingly inconsistent. But they've been inconsistent with their division rivals, which the Buccaneers are not. So I'm going to pick the Bills to win. Not a great reason, I know, but look, I had to pick somebody, okay? Next, you got this game that I will not be watching, Panthers versus Falcons. The Falcons went to overtime versus the Colts last week, but they lost because they just could not stop Jonathan Taylor. The run defense for Atlanta was just not good that game, but their offense was even worse, I would argue. Michael Penix just could not hit his receivers. He was struggling throwing the ball all day. They'll be taking on the Panthers, who somehow lost to the Saints. I don't understand how. I don't care how or why. Didn't watch the game. Didn't even look at the highlights because I'm so uninterested in both teams, especially the Saints. Last time these two teams faced off, the Panthers shut out the Falcons 30-0, like an actual ass beating. It's being played in Atlanta though this time, which I hope that'll make a difference. No, because the Falcons, they looked like shit against the Dolphins not too long ago. But the Panthers looked like shit too last week. It's way too much inconsistency this year. This was probably the worst year to be doing prediction videos. Falcons, you're not going to get swept by the Panthers, are you? I'm going to pick the Falcons to win. Next, you got the LA Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, I'm calling them the Chargers this time because it actually looked like a team performance in their win over the Steelers last week. They'll be taking on the team that they blew a fat-ass lead to in the playoffs a couple years ago, the Jaguars. But speaking of blowing fat-ass leads, that's exactly what the Jaguars did against the Texans. They had this lead right here, and they somehow did not win it. CJ Stroud wasn't even the quarterback for the Texans. They had Davis Mills. I don't even think it's possible to accurately predict this game, so I'm just going to flip a coin real quick. Heads for Jaguars, tails for Chargers. I got tails. Even though the Chargers always struggle to get a hot streak going, there's a chance that they can start one up here by taking advantage of the loss of Travis Hunter, who is out for the season for the Jaguars, unfortunately. I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars win, but hey, the coin said tails, it said Chargers, so that's who's gonna win, I guess. Next, you get the Chicago Bears taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears barely beat the Giants, but the Giants tend to, make games close whenever they feel like it. So I don't know if that says more about the Giants or the Bears, but it was a close shave of a win. Meanwhile, the Vikings lost at home to the resurging Baltimore Ravens. On paper, J.J. McCarthy did not look very good. He threw more incompletions than completions, and he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. I won't get on him for that too much, though, because it's a second-year player and you're putting all this on him. And I also understand that he's not quite 100% yet, still coming off of a, shaken up injury. They'll be facing off against a seemingly more stable Bears team, but the last time these two teams went against each other, the Bears blew a late-game lead. But now it's being played in Minnesota, and the Bears, their record is looking abnormally good right now. I'd say they're due for a loss, and I see the Vikings handing them another one, especially in Minnesota. The Bears are proven to be a real threat in the NFC, but I have the Vikings taking them down again this year. Next, you have a game that I fear is going to suck. Packers versus Giants. The loss of Cam Skattebo seemed to really rock the Giants because they haven't won since. They'll be taking on a Packers team that just had an unbelievably shit performance against the Eagles on Monday Night Football. The Packers are supposed to be one of the top dog teams, one of the scariest. Why? How is there nobody that looks like a serious fucking threat in the NFL? Not one. Maybe the Patriots, because they're low-key fucking everyone up. But there's just nobody that can consistently look dominant, if that makes sense. Packers should win this game. There is absolutely zero reason for them to even have a close game with the New York Giants. Next, you got the Bagels taking on the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Last time we seen the Bagels, they were part of an absolute thriller against the Chicago Bears. Joe Flacco having a career game where he threw for 470 goddamn yards. Then they proceeded to trade away Logan Wilson, just further soiling that defense that was already bad. Horrible, if you will. They'll be taking on a Steelers team that got quite literally dominated by the Chargers, even though the score would say otherwise. Looking at it on paper and actually watching the highlights, it was a massacre. That was all Chargers. Aaron Rodgers and the rest of that Steelers offense looked like something you'd see out of a gas station toilet. And they actually lost to the Bagels last time these two teams faced off. And on top of this being an AFC North game, this is another matchup that I just don't think it's possible to predict accurately. But I'm going to pick the Steelers to win since it's at Pittsburgh and the Bengals defense is even softer than when they last faced off. This game is literally being handed to the Steelers. They need this win. Next, you got the Houston Texans versus the Tennessee Titans. The Titans just came back from a bye week, while the Texans just came back from a 19-point deficit against the Jaguars. Impressive fourth quarter by Houston, but we can't ignore the first three quarters where they looked awful. At the time of recording, it does not look like CJ Stroud is returning for the Texans, so it looks like it's going to be Davis Mills again for them at quarterback. But the last time these two teams faced off, it was a shutout by Houston. And whereas I don't see them shutting the Titans out again, I do think they will beat the Titans again, as they should. Next, you get two teams whose fan bases can only be rejuvenated by God himself. The Niners are starting to feel the effects of Fred Warner's absence because against the Lambs, they were doing virtually nothing past the D-line. The D-line is the only good part about their defense, or at least last week it was. But too many times did I see the Rams hit players that were wide open, or if a runner got past the defensive line, there was nobody stopping the runner. Just the linebackers and secondaries for the Niners were just bad. They were horrible. They'll be taking on a Cardinals team that was getting thoroughly abused by the Seahawks for 30 minutes. I say 30 minutes because it was a brutal first half for the Cardinals, but the Seahawks started to slip up in the second half. Last time these two teams met, it came down to a game-winning field goal by the 49ers. But that was when they had Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. I think Nick Bosa was playing. I'm literally losing count of when 49er players are getting injured because there's so goddamn many. If the Cardinals lose this game, you can go ahead and slap them off the shelf of playoff contenders because I know a few people were suggesting that they'd be a sneaky wildcard team and all this shit. And for the 49ers, I'm starting to believe that this is just another throwaway season for them because even though they're winning some games, it's like you're clearly not in a great state right now. You don't quite look like a Super Bowl team, but again, you're not so bad to where you should be tanking. The Niners are in the worst position right now, middle of the road. But I do think they have what it takes to beat the Cardinals a second time. As long as that defense locks the fuck in, this should be a win for the 49ers. Next, you get another NFC West matchup between the Seahawks and the Rams in Inglewood. The fan bases of both teams really think that they are Super Bowl contenders, which is real silly considering neither team has really beaten anyone of good quality, or at least not many of them. The Rams beat down a pretty battered 49 injuries team, and for some reason their fans think that makes them the king of the hill, which is just so cute. And I need to touch on this Rams 49ers drama lunacy real quick because it is unbelievably goofy. Rams fans are excessively celebrating their win over the 49ers because 49er fans were talking shit when they beat the Rams the first time, while not taking into account the state of the 49ers, which is that they're the most injured team in the NFL. And when 49ers fans bring that up, the Rams fans will respond with, "Oh, you're just making excuses because when you beat us the first time, we didn't hear none of that." And I just need to ask Rams fans this real quick. And I know that there is no more than one Rams fan that watches my videos, and they're probably not even toxic. But I'm just so curious on their thought process behind shit like this. If you get in a physical altercation, a fight, with a person in a wheelchair, and then that person in the wheelchair beats your ass somehow, and then you come back for seconds and then beat the wheelchair person's ass, what is there to celebrate? They're crippled. You're supposed to beat them. You're supposed to beat them both times. You just look mid for winning and horrible for losing. The Rams, there's just no way they look great in this situation. There's no way they look anything better than fine in these games against the Niners because the Niners are too beat up. And I quite honestly can't even tell if it's rage bait or not. I just hate stupid people. Meanwhile, the Seahawks absolutely decimated the Cardinals in the first half of the game, and then in the second half they were slipping up. They just kept losing the ball. They looked like a completely different team in the second half from when they were in the first half. Fortunately for Seattle, they were taking on the Cardinals, so most of their mistakes were not really capitalized on. But the Rams are a much better team than the Cardinals, and they're not a team that you should be making mistakes with. The Rams will absolutely take advantage of that shit. And with this being played in LA, as well as the Seattle Seahawks' poor success rate against the Rams over the last few years, I'm going to have to pick the Rams to win this game. I really hope it's going to be a good game, but I do see the Rams coming away with this one. Next up, we got the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Broncos in Denver. The Chiefs just came off of a bye week, but the last time we saw them on the field, they lost to the Bills, and Mahomes did not look good. They'll be facing off against a Broncos team that wins yet another horrible garbage game. The Broncos' win streak continues, but it's not a very pretty one. A lot of it consists of low-scoring, unentertaining, disorganized wins. Here's the thing though, last time they went against the Chiefs in Mile High, they almost won. They were so close to winning. And the Chiefs are not looking like their usual dominant selves. They're looking like any other team right now. But with how poor the Broncos offense is, I have no idea how this game will shake up. I'm probably gonna regret this, but I'm picking the Broncos to win this game. I told you about the home field advantage. I told you that, you know what I'm saying, they've been putting up good fights against the Chiefs. Chiefs aren't looking too hot themselves, so I think Denver's defense will keep the Chiefs at bay. It just really comes down to the Denver offense, which has been so underwhelming. But a Broncos win here will definitely shake shit up in the AFC. Next, you got the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cleveland Browns. The Ravens got a nice little recovery win against the Vikings. Lamar had a nice, light comeback game where he didn't do too much, but he also did just enough to lead his team to victory, as I predicted. Meanwhile, there was damn near nothing nice about the Browns last week. They managed to lose to the Jets because we've learned that their special teams is complete basura. But this is also an AFC North game. Could go either way. The Browns know how to beat the Ravens and vice versa. But I am still going to go for the Ravens because I think with the return of Lamar Jackson and a mostly healthy squad again, they can perhaps start rolling the ball a little bit. And I know, like I said, the Browns can beat the Ravens. They've done it. They're just too trash right now. I don't want to pick them. And quite honestly, I hope the Browns lose every game Shedeur Sanders is not playing. But yeah, I got Baltimore taking this one. On Sunday Night Football, you got the Detroit Lions versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I was hoping this would be a good game, but after seeing how the Eagles played last week, I'm not so sure of it. I'm thankful that I missed 3 of the 3.5 hours this game lasted for. I didn't tune into like the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. And yeah, again, I am so glad I didn't watch the game. Even looking at the stat sheet, the Eagles were horrible. Despite the win, they did beat the Packers barely. Just no one looked good. Meanwhile, the Lions dominated the Redskins. Can't praise the Lions too much because it's a beat up Redskins team, but let's not act like they've been dropping 40 plus points on other teams as well. I originally had the Lions winning this game. Now I'm about 99% sure that the Lions are going to win this game. No way a team that just dropped 40 plus loses the very next week to a team that just dropped 10. Lions, please make it happen. Please, I'm begging you. And finally, you got this fucking stinker. Why do the Raiders get back-to-back primetime games? Why? They were also a contributor to a shit-ass 10-7 game, and they were on the losing end of it. Stop putting the Raiders in prime time. I have nothing else to say about this fucking stinky, piss poor shit stain of a team. They'll be taking on the Cowboys, who made a couple of moves before the trade deadline, bagging both Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams, so that should definitely beef up the defense, even though you could have just kept Micah Parsons. And I'm sure Dallas is feeling pretty refreshed after the bye week, so hopefully with this rejuvenation, they can come back and start winning some games. Starting with this win here over the Raiders. The Cowboys better win this game. If the Cowboys don't win this game, I will join everyone in dunking on them for the rest of the season because there's just no reason you lose this game. I am so curious as to how this upcoming postseason's gonna go because there's just too much inconsistency. There's just too much. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Until then, we're gonna have to keep suffering in this cascade of uncertainty.